Hello everybody, there's a couple of people we're still waiting for, but it's lovely to see so many familiar names on here and a little bit of diversity of where we've all come from. So can I just ask, as we're waiting for other people, for you to be able to just pop your name and where you live in the chat, and you might also want to say the business that you have or what you do. Because this is a pretty cool group of people and you might all want to connect with each other outside of this webinar, given some of the work that I know that you all do. And yeah, it could be a useful way to connect with some other businesses. We've got a good Toowoomba Gundawindi contingent on here at the moment, so you may find that there's people on here who you already know. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to make a start on the webinar that we are hosting here today. I want to be able to start straight away by sharing a presentation that we have for this. So let me just get this up and running for us. And I want to just let you know from the beginning that we are recording this. So there'll be some people who at a later stage will be able to see what's happening, who weren't able to make it. So a couple of things. Firstly, I think everybody's managed to work out how to mute themselves, but if you haven't, if you can just do that so we don't have too much background noise, that would be really great. There will be some times where I ask you to unmute yourself and answer a question or maybe share some insights or ideas, so prepare yourself for that. But if at this stage we can mute ourselves and we will be able to keep a track of the chat that is happening, so please use that chat section of the webinar of Zoom. So welcome. There'll be a few people who know me and who I am familiar to, but there's others who won't know me. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Julia Telford and I am the founder and director of Engage and Create Consulting based here in Gundawindi. I'm also one of 4 directors of the Gundawindi Business Hub, a business that we set up to support businesses looking for office space and wanting to be able to work in a really collaborative co-working area, but have their own office basically. So I'm one of 8 tenants here. I'm a fan of all things rural and regional, and that will come through in how I speak today, in the examples that I use, and in the work that we do. And I'm at the moment, or have been on a journey of being really intentional about improving my health, which has led me to cross paths with fabulous people like Joy McClymont from Off the Track Training based up at Longreach, but also to really make sure that I am practicing what I preach and really focusing on that as a way to make sure I'm living my life in a really intentional and positive way. I am also the proud mother of guinea pigs, not mother of dragons, but certainly mother of guinea pigs. So we have a little block just out of Gundawindi where I manage to sneak various random animals on a regular basis. So at the moment we have a gosling and some baby guinea pigs, which I enjoy being able to hang out with them in the afternoons. As part of our welcome, I also acknowledge the traditional custodians and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I do this at the beginning of face-to-face workshops, but I also think it's really important when we're doing work online. We have a really wide virtual network, and so acknowledging the diversity in our great country, I think, is really important. The other part of this is for us to be really intentional about what got you here and what you want to achieve from this 40 odd minutes that we're going to spend time together. So can I ask you to pop in the chat? A few people mentioned who they are and where they live and their business. But this is about us being really intentional about how we spend our time, energy, and resources, and we'll talk more about that. So I'm really keen for you to share in the chat section what got you here today and what you want to achieve from this time. This is not a passive getting talked at webinar. This is going to be really interactive. So part of this is for us to know what got you here and what you want to be able to achieve from this, and being really clear around your intentions. So if people can pop in the chat what it is that they want to get out of this hour, that would be really important. Because for us, it really is about intention, how we spend our time, where we put our energy, and where we invest money, resources, whatever that might look like for you. So I've got a couple of our favourite quotes around here. We know that energy flows where intention goes. So where is it that you are intentionally investing your time and energy? Who are you intentionally investing your time and energy with? Because what we're actually wanting to be able to do is embed some really strong and good behaviours here. So I really like Brendan Bouchard, and if you haven't crossed paths with him before, he's an American guy who has podcasts, has blogs, has a really great website. So he talks about first it's an intention, then it becomes a behaviour, then it's a habit, a practice, and second nature. And that's when it is simply who we are. That's when we actually embed this in who we are and what we do on a regular basis. We are getting some feedback through the chat, so that's really good. What we want to be able to also have a look at is when we are really clear on our intention, when we are absolutely crystal clear on what it is that we want to do and what it is that we want to be achieving, the universe will conspire with us to make it happen. So I am a believer of the world works in mysterious ways, and it will give us what we need. What we want to be able to do is make sure that we are putting ourselves in the best possible situation, or giving ourselves the greatest opportunity to be able to look at what that looks like. And so part of that is us doing some work. Part of that is us looking at getting a handle on where we spend some time and energy. If people have come across Stephen Covey before, potentially this quadrant will look very familiar. Maybe it's something that you've read or heard of in other workshops and programs and not spent too much time. I'm encouraging you to find a piece of paper or make some notes somewhere around this for yourself. But what we want to be able to do is get a handle on where we are currently spending our time and energy. And that's where I think this work of Covey's is really useful. So I want to talk through this a little bit, and then we're going to do some work on, in relation to our own business or role that we have in a business. So if we look at quadrant 1, the urgent quadrant, that's where we have work that is important to be done and also has a time sensitivity around it. It's an urgent, we urgently need to spend some time on that. And it gets talked about as our quadrant of necessity. So think about that in terms of crisis you might have, pressing problems, there might be some deadline-driven projects that need to happen, any preparation for something that is needing to come up. That's what we call our urgent and important quadrant. Equally, we've got our not urgent but important quadrant, and that's around our focus. So that's a lot of our forward planning, our forecasting, our relationship building for particular clients, possibly being really clear and intentional around our strategy, our values, our prep and planning side of things. And this is really around where, from a leadership point of view, we want to be spending time. This is around the quality work that we want to be doing on a regular basis. And this is often the quadrant that gets swamped by activity and effort that comes and that can be dragged into some of the other quadrants. So this is where we want to make sure, as intentional people, we are spending our time and energy. It's often the harder work too. So it's often the stuff that we want to put to the bottom of a list or the bottom of our day, because it requires our most brain space, and it is the harder work that we will do. So often it's easier to do some of the other work that's in the bottom quadrants. So I want to talk about quadrant 3 for a moment, where it is work that might be urgent, but it's actually not important. It is stuff where we are actually reacting to other people's time and energy. It's some interruptions. It might be phone calls. It's certainly some emails and some meetings. It's things that, it's social media potentially. So things that, you know, have a sense of urgency around them, but really are not going to help us meet our goals, are not necessarily going to help us work towards our strategy or our long-term vision of what we want to be doing in our day job or in our business, and really can be the activities that suck time from our day and help us feel that we are being busy but not productive. And so I would encourage you to have a think about that. And quadrant 4 is around what we actually need to avoid. So what's the busy work? What's the emails? What are some meetings? What are phone calls? What are some things that are actually happening that really are just a waste of our time, are not even not moving us towards our strategic direction or what we've got as our goals and intention for our business, but are just actually not moving the needle at all. And this is the work that we really want to avoid altogether. So this is the work that needs to be ditched, or the activity that needs to be ditched altogether. So let's have a think about this in relation to you and your business. And what I want to do is share a couple of things here around what this means for Engage and Create, because what's really important for us is that we are proactive and we feel that we are in charge or have a sense of control over our time and efforts, rather than reacting to the world around us. So this is part of us being able to be in control and stay in the driver's seat. There's so much in the world that we can't control, but what being able to do some of this work does is keep us in control of what we can manage. And that is often actually how we intentionally invest our time and energy. So for us, let's have a look at a couple of the quadrants. So we will find from time to time, some of our work is urgent and important, and that is sometimes some tenders or funding applications, either for us or for our clients. But we found last week that one of the councils that we do work with put out a tender with a really short time frame. So it is worth to us, if we were to get it, potentially $90,000 a year. So it was worth it for us to drop some other jobs and intentionally invest time and energy in developing our response to that tender. We knew that it was coming out, but we didn't necessarily know the time frame, and the time frame to get it completed is a week. So we needed, all of a sudden, that became an urgent and important investment of our time and energy. Likewise, for some of our clients, they will find a grant or an opportunity for them that they want to make sure that they can invest in, and they get in contact with us, and we absolutely look at how we can get a response in for them around that. So some of these time-sensitive things are really important to us, particularly if being able to win a grant or win a tender has some substantial money attached to it to be able to continue to do some work in the businesses. The other thing for me as the business owner, or as the leader in the business, I have 3 staff who work part-time and varying days through the week. So it's really important for me. Sometimes I need to be able to give them the support and help them at the time that is really critical for them. So as the business owner, sometimes I need to stop what I'm doing to be able to offer support for the staff, because that's really time critical or necessary for what's happening for them in that period. And there'll be other times where there is a particular crisis for us or our key clients, and we need to drop other activities to be able to do that. I know online we've got some people who work in the HR and compliance space for clients. That's a really good example of where that quadrant one work will happen for you. Something happens and they need your support straight away. That absolutely has to be you, and that absolutely has to be delivered in that time sensitive frame. That's what we look at in that quadrant. In quadrant 2, the focus or the really strategic work that we want to be doing. For us as a team at Engage and Create Consulting, that's around our goal setting, our planning, our forecasting, both in terms of projects and work, as well as finances and our budget. Absolutely, it's our professional development for me, but also for my team, and what are the areas they want to be able to work in, and where do we want to grow their skills. It's around some client relationships. It's development of new projects like this Engage online e-course. So I think I've only been talking about it for about 3 years now. So, you know, it's great that we are finally having it happen. And I needed a few people around me to make it happen. So that's certainly been the case. And for me personally, some of the board roles that I take on are really in that strategic. They're not urgent, but it is important from a relationship building, from an advocacy role for rural and regional businesses. I include some of the board roles in this focus and in this quadrant 2. So while I'm talking, I'm hoping that you are able to be thinking about what about for you in your role or in your business. What are some of those activities that happen in our first and second quadrants? Because then we look at quadrant 3 and 4. So 3 is some of the work that you might want to avoid. So from my point of view, I wrote some lists around what are the activities that I am doing that I could be avoiding, and that actually helped develop some position descriptions for Nat, for Yaz and for Lauren, who are now part of the Engage and Create team. So think about it, if you are the business owner or if you're one of the leaders in the organisation, this work might still need to happen. It just doesn't need to be done by you. And if you can get some clarity around this, you're actually stepping through what becomes a position description or some actions and activity that you need somebody else to do in the business. So how is that helping build skills in others? So the reality is I don't have to go to all of the meetings anymore because I have other team members who can do that. I don't need to respond to all emails or phone calls. Some of the projects I don't need to be involved with. I might be there at the beginning to help set up some of the strategic direction and help map out what the plan is of how that project needs to be implemented. But in the day-to-day implementation, I don't need to be part of that. Somebody else has got the ability and the capacity to be able to deliver on that. But what we do look at as a team is what in our quadrant 4 we can avoid altogether. What is it that can be ditched? So if we look at quadrant 3 being something that can be delegated, quadrant 4 is what can be ditched altogether. So what are some emails? What are phone calls? What are some meetings? Sometimes everybody gets very excited about let's meet for an hour to talk about something that could have been done in a 5-minute phone call or better, an email. So think about what are the things that we're doing out of habit and how do we need to shift that to be intentional. And to be honest, I put clients in quadrant 4 as well. We have ditched some clients because we got very intentional around who were the clients that we wanted to work with and why. And when we did that and then reviewed the current list of clients we were working with, some didn't cut it. We didn't continue on with that. We absolutely helped them find somebody else. But when we are intentional about who we want to do work with, it helps us then work out who are we working with that maybe we would rather see them work with other people. And that helped us get really clear on that. And we got to say sayonara to some clients that didn't meet the criteria for us wanting to be able to work with them. So I want to press pause here, and I'd love for people to share something around what they have thought of being able to put into the 4 quadrants? What's something that you might have identified that you want to put into quadrant 1? What are some of your activities or ways that you spend your time that fall into each of these 4 quadrants? It would be great if people are happy to share that in the chat. So hopefully people are madly scribbling while we go. Phoebes is thinking about it. I'm going to keep moving us through. Please consider popping those things in the chat because that could be really useful to other people on the webinar as well. So let's have a look about if we are really clear around what this means for us from a, if we're really clear around what this means in terms of how we're intentionally using our time, a few of us might be in a situation where we actually need to get some buy-in from some other people. You might be the business owner or founder and have other people in the team, staff that you see on a regular basis. Equally, you might have people in your team who are virtual support to you. So this can literally be an accountant, it might be your bookkeeper, it could be somebody who helps you with your graphic design, but it's really important that if we have any cheerleaders, and that's anybody I think who plays a role in helping our business achieve, if we have any cheerleaders working around the edges of our business, it's really important that they understand why we do what we do and have some buy-in around the intent we have for our business. And so there's some questions that you can work through here. For yourself, if you are the sole trader, if you're the sole person in your business, or you've got a day job and you're working on building something to the side of that, these questions are really useful for you to be able to have a look at. So what motivates you? Equally, what motivates your team? So I need to be really clear that I understand what are the motivations and the drivers for Nat, Yaz and Lauren in my team, because I need to be making sure that I'm meeting those motivations, that I am being able to make sure that they are able to do work that is really meaningful to them, that ties in to the engage and create ethos and why we do what we do, because I want them to really enjoy the work that they're doing when they're with me, and I want to make sure that they're giving their best, that they're able to contribute their best ideas and their best energy to the client, A, because that reflects on me, B, because I want to be able to make sure that I can get a financial return for the work that they're doing. So crudely, you know, we need to be having that business turnover happening. But I actually want to make sure that we are in this for the long term, that the staff that work for me feel really engaged and rusted on to what I am wanting to achieve, because that's important to me. Equally, what it does then is make sure that they see their role in the bigger picture. So they are not just, you know, here to type on a computer or answer and respond to emails. They are actually buying into a much bigger purpose and reason for this business existing, which is to support rural and regional communities to be really viable and vibrant. So it is important that we are really clear and intentional on a really regular basis around why we do what we do. So one of the things for me is often some of this sits quite subconsciously within us. And so it's really important that we can raise the consciousness of this, that we can, again, be really intentional around this, because once we can bring consciousness and intent to this, we are on fire. We are realising that even on days when things aren't all working well, we are still working towards a bigger goal and a bigger vision. And it also means that for those of us that play a leadership role in our business, we can use this to inspire and support our team around us. So we will often have conversations about, you know, today was not a great day. We didn't have a win. We missed a grant. We didn't get a grant for a client that we were really hoping that we would. And those things happen. You know, we have bad days, but what we want to be able to do is make sure that we're always focused in on the bigger picture. And so for us, that's around being absolutely crystal clear of our values. You know, they are consistent and long-term. For us, they're like a skeleton that hold us together. They absolutely give us direction, and they absolutely help us with our decision-making. And so what I've done is shared our engage and create values statement here. We've got it in the office. We have it on our business cards, and we really use this as a filter for any of the projects that we might be working on. When new clients approach us, we will, you know, run them through the filter of our values. And equally, if anybody wants us to do speaking or, you know, anything in that kind of a vein, we absolutely want to make sure that it fits front and center with the values of our business. For me, this means that I have shared really my personal values and embedded them into the business. So this won't be relevant for everybody on the webinar, depending on whether you are the business owner or you're somebody who works within another business. But you know, this is front and center of the conversations that we have as a team. These values are always up front. And I guess it took me a little while to determine, how do I see Julia the person and Julia the business founder or director? Where do I fit into some of these things? And I've come across Brad Lomenick before, and possibly people on the webinar have also. But I want to talk through this because I think he helps explain it in another way. And there's the link to his website is on this page. But the way that Brad explains it is he talks about identity being unchanging. It's really who we are. It's our true being. So he talks about that being our identity, and that our calling is our why or our purpose. So that's why we do what we do. The piece that I think he talks about that is really useful for us sometimes, particularly people who have had a career or had jobs that have been quite diverse and different. He talks about the assignment is what we're doing at the point to deliver on our calling. And this is what can change sometimes. So this is the piece that I find useful sometimes working with some of our clients is how we make sure we don't become so attached to a role or a title that we think that that's all we are. So you are more than a farmer. You are more than a graphic designer. You are more than a CEO. That is purely the assignment that you have at the moment that is delivering on your calling and is linked to your identity. So for me, I was able to start to peel some of this away and say, my assignment is supporting communities to thrive. Initially, that happened in agriculture and natural resource management. So that sustainable ag place that I worked in for 15, 20 years. But now my assignment is more in small business and community development. And that assignment has changed slightly, but my calling or my purpose around wanting to work in rural and regional areas of Australia and support viable and vibrant communities, that's actually stayed the same. It's how I have done this, the assignments in which I have delivered on this, that's the piece that's changed. And I think if we can think about that as part of this, pulling these pictures together, I think that's what can be really important, because otherwise what I see is people get really attached to a job or a title and they find that their whole value, their whole worth is attached in that. And that's not useful if that needs to change. That's not useful if you need to actually resign from a role or the business isn't viable and we need to look at how we can exit gracefully. We have a whole lot of people across Australia at the moment as a result of drought who may not stay as producers on the land if they are so tightly wound and attached to that role without being able to stretch and pull that out in terms of their calling and their identity, that's where we see things start to unravel. So I encourage you to have a think about this for yourself and the role that you have. Equally, I hope that some of this work could be useful for you to use with some of the clients that you have in your business. So why have we been pulling some of this together? Why is it that we are having this webinar and wanting to have some of these conversations with people? And I guess part of it is because of this Engage e-course that we are launching. But I guess I want to take a step sideways and just explain why this came about. If we are wanting to talk about the intention and why we're intentionally doing things within Engage and Create, there were a couple of reasons for me that I wanted to be able to develop this. One is, if I want to be able to support rural and regional communities across Australia, that is really hard to do face to face. There's a lot of travel involved with that. And part of the challenge I have sometimes working with clients or working with community organisations is I really struggle when I'm asked to go and speak at a one-off event somewhere where more than 2/3 of that invoice is actually in travel, accommodation, flights, hire cars, the rest of it. So I wanted to be able to create something where people could have really valuable content and kind of get a bit of a feel for the work that I do and what's important to us within the business without them having to spend thousands of dollars to get me there. So intentionally, this means that we can get our work across a broader area and it not be so expensive. And the other piece of this, if you remember right back at the beginning of this webinar, I talked about being intentional around my own health. And part of that is around managing both my anxiety and also more recently my ongoing recovery and making sure that I still stay really healthy after having breast cancer. So part of that for me is making sure that I am not spending so much time sitting in a car, in an airport, on a plane. And so to be able to do a program like this actually keeps me at home more often and means that I can be much more intentional around my health. So I want to be really upfront around my intention for delivering this program. And they're certainly the two main reasons of why we did this. While I've been blabbering on here, you've probably had a chance to have a read around what these modules are. And I guess these modules are based on our methodology for the key people of influence on the program. This is our methodology of how we work with clients in a one-on-one process. And what we've been able to do is kind of package that up and use them as the modules for the program. And being able to package that up for you to be able to have a look at. Again, I'm quite intentional around this will be useful for you as an individual and equally for any businesses who have clients and customers. This is work that you would be able to embed with them as well. So we want to be able to work through this. We have had some lovely feedback already around people who are looking to do this in anticipation. And I know I saw Phoebe's actually on the webinar this morning. So Phoebe, thank you for the response that you wrote. But it was lovely to see these words. So this woman seriously understands small business. I don't know a single entrepreneur who wouldn't benefit from a bit of help shaping their direction. Congrats on launching the first e-course, Jules. Can't wait to tune in. So hopefully this webinar, Phoebe, has been a bit of a taster for you around what's coming. But also what we wanted to really be able to do, I guess, is be very intentional in terms of how we can offer support to those who are supporting us. And so what you'll see over the next couple of months is the price of this course doing the rounds, and it will be promoted and is promoted at $590. What we wanted to do was to offer those who were supporting us by investing your time and energy in this webinar. We wanted to be able to offer you a code to be able to have that initial course cost reduced. Try and say that quickly. So you'll see an Engage webinar code here. That's going to expire next Tuesday, the 12th of November. So if you are wanting to register for the webinar, which will be happening starting on the 2nd of January in 2020, so it goes live on the 2nd of January, which is the first Thursday of the month, and then we'll run through the 5 Thursdays of January 2020. If you're wanting to do that and you want to register and be able to access it at the introductory offer, then use that code, hop online. I am going to paste the webinar into the link into the chat box, so hopefully you can all see that. So you've got the link there to be able to go straight through, use that engage webinar, and you'll be able to get the reduction in the cost. We are having another webinar this evening from 7 till 8. So if you've found this useful and you want to be able to share this with people in your networks, please send them to the Facebook post that's got the links for the 2 webinars. Alternatively, feel free to send them send them my email address. I'm happy to connect them through to the webinar this evening. We're really excited around what the opportunities are and what will come out of these various modules. So as people sign up, you'll receive an email, you'll get a video and a worksheet each week with some really practical, useful tools, some great questions that we have used over the time with our clients and also internally with our own business as we have grown. But what I hope you will see out of this webinar is that we want to make sure that it is really practical. We want to make sure that this is useful to what it is that you're wanting to achieve. So I want to draw breath here for a moment. I want to ask if there's anybody has any questions or any actions that they want to be able to share with the others on the chat. So if you've got questions that you want to ask me, feel free to pop it in the chat. Alternatively, if anybody's really brave and they want to share with us and have a chat, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so we can go back to the group. If there's any comments, if there's any questions, if anybody would like to share something, I'd love for you to do that either in the chat, or if you want to have a chat with us, unmute yourself and let's see what people have to say. Thanks, Phoebe. That's great feedback. And yeah, happy for you to share it with your networks. That's great. If people are happy and there's not other questions or comments that anybody has, I'm happy to say farewell to everybody. We have recorded this, so we will shoot that through to you so that you have a copy of it. Thank you for investing your time this morning. And certainly if you have questions or if you think of something over the next few days and you want to have some more conversations about it, please feel free to get in contact with us. We will talk to you all soon. Bye. And voting.